Hello, and welcome back to the podcast Green Horizons Global Insights, where we discuss and present a variety of UN Sustainable Development Goals. For this episode, we're going to be talking about UN SDG 11 Sustainable Cities and Communities. The end goal here is to make cities and human settlements inclusive, safe, resilient, and sustainable. In the UN's own words, the world's population reached 8 billion in 2022, over half living in urban areas. This figure is expected to rise, with 70% of people expected to live in cities by 2050. Approximately 1.1 billion people currently live in slums or slum like conditions in cities, with 2 billion more expected in the next 30 years. However, many of these cities are not ready for this rapid urbanization, and it outpaces the development of housing, infrastructure, and services, which led to a rise in slums or slum-like conditions. So this is a bit of an overview of our current situation. So this goal has 11 targets. The first one, 11.1, being that by 2030, we should ensure access for all adequate, safe, and affordable housing and basic services and upgrade slums for all. So this basically, it's quite straightforward. It just means that everyone should be able to afford and have access to, safe, affordable housing, basic services such as water, electricity, food, water, like running water and stuff like that. And the second goal is that second goal being 11.2, by 2030 to provide access to safe, affordable, accessible, and sustainable transport systems for all, improving road safety notably by expanding public transport, with special attention to the needs of those in vulnerable situations, women, children, persons with disabilities, and older persons. So this basically means to just make cities more accessible for those who do not have a car, and also make it so that you do not need a car in the city. So to really expand the public transport and make sure this public transport is safe and accessible for all, meaning that, for example, if you're in a wheelchair, you're still able to access the public transport, that there's elevators and spaces for people who may be in a wheelchair or may have some sort of physical disabilities to be still be able to use the public transport, and also to make it safe, to make sure that women or young children or anyone who might be a bit more vulnerable are able to safely use the transport without risk of any sort of danger. So this is a really important goal, and I will talk more later about some personal um, connections to this goal. 11.3 is that by 2030 to enhance inclusive and sustainable urbanization and capacity for participatory, integrated, and sustainable human settlements planning and management in all countries. So this means making cities inclusive, fair, and sustainable for everyone while protecting the environment. It involves careful planning and management of housing, transport, and resources with input from communities. The goal is to build urban areas where people can thrive now and in the future. So basically, just making sure that everyone is safe and able to thrive in these urban communities. 11.4 is to strengthen efforts to protect and safeguard the world's cultural and natural heritage. For example, landmarks and areas with legal protection under an international treaty administered by UNESCO for having cultural, historical, or significant or scientific significance. So this means really making sure and increasing the already their efforts to protect these cultural and UNESCO World Heritage sites. So this basically just means that these sites are it ensures that these sites are preserved for the future generations, and that there really are international and legal agreements and laws put in place that these sites will remain protected. 11.5 is that by 2030, significantly reduce the number of deaths and number of people affected and substantially decrease the direct economic losses relative to global gross domestic product caused by disasters, including water-related disasters, with a focus on protecting the poor and people in vulnerable situations. So this basically means that by 2030, the goal is to reduce any sort of deaths, injuries, or economic losses caused by natural disasters, specifically water-related natural disasters. So that'd be like flooding, tsunamis, and stuff like that, tropical storms, those heavy water flooding storms. So, and this specifically focuses on the poor and vulnerable. So making sure that these are less affected during such natural disasters, ensuring that their housing is able to withstand, for example, flooding or strong winds or any sort of natural disaster conditions. So it's basically just making sure that everyone is able to survive these natural disasters. 11.6 is by 2030 reduce the adverse per capita environmental impact of cities, including by paying special attention to the air quality and municipal and other waste management. So this means that the aim here is to reduce the negative environmental impact of cities per person, focusing on improving air quality and managing waste effectively. So this just means to ensure that the air quality stays safe for everyone, that it does not get too polluted, so that people who, especially those who might have some sort of respiratory illnesses, are not affected by the air quality and do not have to suffer or potentially, get sick due to the bad air quality. So it really focuses on making sure that the air quality is safe for all. 11.7 is by 2030 provide universal access to safe, inclusive, and accessible green and public spaces, in particular for women, children, and older persons and persons with disabilities. So this means to have, parks and other green natural places in cities, and to make sure these are once again, like the public transport, accessible for everyone. So that means perhaps if you're in a wheelchair, that you're still able to, go and look at the garden, or sit in the garden, or sit on the bench. That it's the rows in the garden are accessible for everyone, and that these gardens are also safe, so that women and children or other people who may be, subject to some sort of targeting are able to safely enjoy the nature and spend their time here without having to worry about any potential danger they might be in. 11A is support positive economic, social, and environmental links between urban, pre-urban, and rural areas by strengthening national and regional development planning. So this says to strengthen planning at national and regional levels to create positive connections between cities, nearby urban areas, and rural regions by benefiting the economy, society, and environment. 11B is by 2020 substantially increase the number of cities and human settlements adopting and implementing integrated policies plan towards inclusion, resource efficiency, mitigation, and adaptation to climate change, resilience to disasters, and develop and implement in line with the Sendai Framework for Disaster Risk Reduction 2015 to 2030, holistic disaster risk assessment, risk management at all levels. So this means that by 2020, the goal was to significantly increase the number of cities using integrated policies to promote inclusion, use resources efficiently, address climate change, and build disaster resilience. This includes adopting comprehensive disaster risk management strategies and aligned with the Sendai framework. So the Sendai framework focuses on adoption of measures which address the three dimensions of disaster risk, which are exposure to hazards, vulnerability and capacity, and the hazard's characteristics. In order to prevent the creation of new risk, reducing risk, so this is in order to prevent the creation of a new risk, to reduce the existing risk, and to increase the resilience. 11C is to support least developed countries, including through financial and technical assistance in building sustainable and resilient buildings utilizing local materials. So this just means that countries who may not have the kind of economy or finances to be able to build these cities and safe housings for everyone, that these are financially supported to make sure everyone is able to live in safe, stable, resistant to natural disasters homes. So that's what that means. So some of the most pressing challenges facing the cities are that currently cities occupy 3% of the Earth's land, but account for 60 to 80% of energy consumption and 75% of carbon emission. So the ratio, even though there's so little of the Earth's land is covered in cities, they produce so much of the energy and carbon emissions. Another challenge is that most of the urban growth is taking place in small cities and intermediate towns, exacerbating inequalities and urban poverty. So this just means that most of the growth and advancement in the cities are in these small cities, whereas small rich cities, whereas these larger, not as rich cities are not able to keep up with a fast-moving pace, and therefore a lot of people are in poverty. By 2020, it was estimated that 1.1 billion urban residents lived in slums or slum-like conditions, and over the next 30 years, an additional 2 billion people are expected to live in such settlements, mostly in developing countries. So this ties into the what I previously said, that a lot of these larger cities are not as financially stable as some small, extremely rich cities, meaning that not everyone is able to have equal access to housing and healthcare and safe, reliable resources. So, what can be done to help? One huge thing that was previously discussed is to improve public transport. Currently, only 1 in 2 urban residents have convenient access to public transport globally. So, this was a report from 2022. An example of a city which does this incredibly well is Vienna. Vienna has excellent public transport. The public transport is considered to be world class. It is really important that cities focus on implementing inclusive and sustainable urban development policies and practice the prioritizing of access to basic services, affordable housing, and efficient transportation and green spaces for all. So, if cities are able to focus their attention on making sure everyone has basic, safe living or housing opportunities, that they are able to have public transport which is accessible and efficient for everyone, and that they're able to have green spaces for all, this goal can be reached a lot quicker. So, some examples of what I personally do to help is I currently live in Vienna, so I'm able to take the public transport every day, multiple times every day. I am at an age where I could have a driver's license. However, I choose not to have one because I'm able to get around not just the city but the entire country through the excellent public transport services provided. As a student, something the government does to support this is that students get reduced, like pay reduced cost for the public transport, meaning that if you are a student, you don't have to pay as much and you still get the same access to this public transport. So this basically means that because the city that I'm currently living in has world class public transport, I am able I'm able to use it, and it's also something that is safe for me. I don't feel like I am ever in danger while on the public transport, and it's also accessible to everyone. Um, it means that people can, instead of relying on cars to get around, they're able to use public transport, which is a lot better for the environment. So some things that you can do to help if you're interested is to, first of all, the most important thing is to just advocate for the kind of city you believe you need. So if you feel like there's something wrong or something could be improved in your city, for example, the public transport can be improved, you can be you can advocate for better public transport, maybe have some demonstrations or whatever you can do to get the attention to this issue and to get the government to fix it. If you want to do anything else to help, you can go to https dot slash slash sdgs.un.org slash goals slash goal 11. So this was the episode on UN SDG 11, make cities and human settlements safe, inclusive, resilient, and sustainable. I hope this was helpful, and I hope you learned something new and now know how to help. Thank you.